Coming up on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we look a little bit at where they should be in week 2 of install with this new team. We look at the quarterback competition, and we have Derek Vandygriff come in to do an autopsy of the weekend and the Ole Miss baseball program moving forward. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications of new videos when they're posted, and of course, upvote the video itself. Once we get to 1,000 new subscribers to the YouTube channel, we will do a live Ole Miss football post-game show. So we're trying to get Ole Miss legends to participate in that, and it should be a lot of fun to do it. So we look forward to everybody coming in to seeing that. And also here coming up in about 5-10 minutes, Derek Vandygriff is going to give an autopsy of the Tennessee series and talk about where we are as a program, talks about Kentucky this weekend, and talks about exactly where we're at as a baseball program. It's not as dire as you think. So should be a lot of fun going on in this show. But first, in this episode, we want to talk about week 2 of spring practices. This is to be the 4th one, believe it or not. We're already almost a third of the way through spring football, with the 3rd practice due for today. An extra video will come up with press conference highlights if it is available. That's your hint. If they release press conference video, I will do an extra video. That is the key to that. And I'll try to pick up on some little things in the story that I can relay to you guys. So, in week 2, install is coming in. Install is usually 3 or 4 days. It was 6 back in 2006. But it's probably 3 or 4 days now. And the way it works is they do classroom type instruction on the new install. Then they walk through that install then they actually run the plays. And then once it all gets installed, they start being able to run the actual reps to where everything can be done. And everything is designed to be installed and built on one thing or another. So the first thing they're going to teach Ole Miss offense, for instance, is their tempo and the way they're supposed to play, even before a play gets put in. Because honestly, the Ole Miss offense is not that complex. It can't be to be that quick. They want speed. It's going to have to be simple. Now, I will say this. There are Lane Kiffin plays that are installed that are double moves that are designed to create trouble on the outside and in the back end of the defense. That is a strategic thing to make sure behind the linebackers and in front of the linebackers becomes a conflict area for linebackers as they basically run RPOs over and over again. And we had a comment just yesterday talking about the quarterback competition that whichever quarterback can handle the RPO is going to win the job. And that's absolutely true. But the question will be who efficiently runs the offense. Turnovers kind of are going to be the spring training tiebreaker because you don't want to put a quarterback out there that you don't trust. Now, Jaxson Dart has all the talent in the world. Gatorade National Player of the Year. He wouldn't have transferred in if he didn't think he was going to win the job. That is all 100% true. It also is 100% true that he has not been given the job. There's an active quarterback competition. Now, there's hyperbole in that quarterback controversy because they talk about 3 quarterbacks. They put Kincaid Dent in there as well. And anybody knows that he's not likely going to win that. And honestly, it's not likely, I wouldn't phrase it as likely, that Luke Altmyer is going to win it. I think the probability right now is 60% Jaxson Dart. But for Luke Altmyer to have a shot to win this job, he needs to keep that gap that he has right now over Jaxson Dart exactly where it is. And that gap is in experience. There's stuff that Luke Altmyer knows that he's run. He's been through the practices. He knows it's one of those things. You know where the rooms are. They say when somebody breaks into your house, for instance, and you're in the house, who has the advantage? You do, because you know where everything is. You can cut off the lights and go find whatever's needed. You know where everything is going on. Jaxson Dart is still at the point where he's learning how to do everything, how to practice run. What does the operation look like? Who are these new receivers? What is the offensive line like? How does the center snap the ball? Those are questions that he has. There's nothing wrong with it. It's natural. But my point is, while he's doing all that, Luke Altmyer does have the experience because he doesn't have to go through all of that. So after spring practice, he needs to keep the gap right where it is. If that gap closes at all, that's major advantage Jaxson Dart. Period. And that's just the way it works. Everybody wants to talk about the big arms and they look at toolsy stuff. But in the end, it's going to come down to whether or not they turn the ball over or not. Jaxson Dart has a gunslinger's mentality. The kryptonite against a gunslinger's mentality is a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over and operates the offense like a machine. They want a robot back there for Luke Altmyer. I don't know if Luke Altmyer can do that, but that's what they want. And it's one of those situations that will really affect where the install is right now. That's what's going on. And by week 3, you'll start to see them compound reps over and over again. Whenever they talk about you need reps, week 2, week 3. So the end of this week, Saturday, first part of next week is when the competition starts. Before this, it's all education. It's all academic. You're all trying to get things right. It's the first time you've run stuff. There's going to make mistakes. It's going to be sloppy. Into week 2, start of week 3, it should start to look a little bit different. And players that have been here, make no mistake, have the advantage right now. I love and hate those buzzer beaters, the drama, but oh, the pain when you're on the other side of it. That happened a couple of times in this tournament. And, I needed X and Y happen. But Stat Hero's NCAA single game pick'ems puts the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy sports and gambling. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know best with the gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. So this is what you do. Sign up today, right now, at stathero.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON. That's all one word, locked on, for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Also, do not forget to rate and review us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want to. Just give us a 5-star review. That'll help others find the podcast as well. But thank you for tuning in for that. In the first segment, we talked about where they should be on install right now and talked a little bit about the quarterback competition. And I just want to talk even a little bit more about the quarterback competition because, let's face it, that is the only real story between now and the Troy game, till Labor Day. We're going to talk about it most every show. The quarterback competition is going to come up. Now, whether you agree there's a quarterback competition is irrelevant. If you could have reasons for exactly believing that, that's irrelevant as well because officially, when it comes to Lane Kiffin putting it out, he's not going to, say there's anything less than a quarterback competition. Now, remember in 2015, when Chad Kelly was competing for the quarterback competition with Devontae Kincaid and Ryan Buchanan. It was close all the way up until fall camp, and then you find out it wasn't really a quarterback competition. Now, the only marker that we'll have, really, because they're going to try like hell to keep everything the status quo until the Troy game. Understand that. The only hint that we could have would be Luke Altmyer transferring after the spring because that means that he has seen there's a problem. Not what they said, what he's actually seen as far as the quarterback competition. Right now, they are evenly splitting reps, and they probably will all the way until the fall, until a decision is made. And it's about what you think. There's the experience factor with Luke Altmyer. He makes a bunch of safe throws, makes a bunch of easy throws, and does all this. But he's very technical moving down the field. As a person that has done this this is his second spring, 3 groups of practices that's the way Luke Altmyer does it. Jaxson Dart has the reputation of a gunslinger, and that appears in the football that they're playing early in spring. He believes he can make every throw. He has a super strong arm. He's unbelievably toolsy. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. He's like Matt Corral, but 2 inches taller and 15 pounds heavier to be able to withstand the beating. And he plays with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. It's really cool. There's a reason he's the favorite to be the quarterback when all this is said and done. There's a reason for that. And it's because he is so toolsy, and people are making assumptions that those tools are going to immediately transfer, that his skill set will fit this offense, which I believe it will. I think he has a chance to be really good. So we will see exactly what happens. And honestly, just look forward to talking about this competition for the next 4 months, because I'm going to enjoy it. I enjoy talking about Ole Miss football all year. I have a promise that Ole Miss football is going to be a part of every single show done throughout the year. There's a bunch of people that don't like to do that. They want to talk about what they want to talk about. Well, I want to talk about Ole Miss football. That is my number one. That is always going to be my number one. I'm going to talk about basketball, women's basketball, occasionally soccer, softball if it's required, and baseball. I will talk about all of those things, but my first love is going to be Ole Miss football, along with, most of y'all. If you judge by videos, we talk about it in the last part of the show with Derek Vandygriff. My videos have 75% more views talking about football than talking about any other sport. Just the way it is. So, it should be really fun. And in week 2, they have a chance to make a step. Like I said, Luke Altmyer needs to keep that experience gap to the end of spring. If Jaxson Dart closes out at all, he's in a little bit of trouble as far as the competition goes. But, most people are just going to make assumptions anyway, but it doesn't necessarily matter. But whoever wins this job, I do want to say this. Whoever wins this job, Ole Miss is better for it, because it's going to be a true competition. Ole Miss hasn't seen a true competition like this. They probably haven't had a first and second string quarterback that was this talented since Eli's redshirt freshman year, with Romero Miller being the starter and Eli being the backup. So 1999, somewhere in there, 2000, I think it was 2000. Eli making the thing, and Ole Miss football kind of took off from there. After months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for its Final Four and will determine this year's national champion this coming week. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info from all of the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for leagues this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Also, check out the Locked On Texas channel, a new channel on the Locked On Network where you can get all kinds of news on Texas football. Whenever we're going to do this, we're probably going to pick the 4 Locked On channels that cover the Arch Manning recruitment, give you extra perspectives on that. But don't fall for it. I've explained to you about that several times. I'm here with Derek Vandygriff, and we are going to do a little bit of an autopsy on this past weekend where honestly, Derek, Tennessee kind of just took Ole Miss to the woodshed, didn't they?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that went right for us this weekend. Either starting pitching, bullpen, our lineup, we didn't hit. You look at Gaddis on Friday night, and he comes out and strikes out the side, and I thought, okay, this is the game where he's going to show that he's going to take a hold of that Friday night role and be that ace that we really need. And then in the second inning, just everything fell apart. Super uncharacteristic of him. Couldn't throw his fastball for strike. Couldn't throw anything for strike for that matter. And, it ended up ending his game really, really early there in the second inning and put us behind the 8 ball, which we were never really able to recover from.
Now, my impressions of this game, and literally, I don't consider myself an expert when it comes to college baseball, but I think I know the sport enough to know to be able to comment on it. And first of all, this is one of the few times I've seen us struggle with velocity hitting the ball, and maybe that is because Kevin Graham was not in the lineup as one of our better fastball hitters. And the fireballers that Tennessee just have in their starting rotation is just honestly Vandy-esque.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, really, the weekend kind of set up pretty well for what Ole Miss normally does against those types of teams. We got them in Swayze. We usually win those kind of series against top-ranked teams in Swayze. That's usually a difference maker. And really, the ones we struggle against are people up there throwing mid-80s frisbees up there as fastballs and stuff like that. When you saw Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter come in, and even Casey Mize back several years ago when they got to Swayze, we've always handled velocity, and for whatever reason, this weekend we just couldn't catch up to it. There was just nothing really good that the bats were able to do against it. And it's a really good pitching staff, and keep in mind they're even missing their ace still. Blake Tidwell's supposed to be back in like a week or so, and good Lord, I don't really know who's going to hit them after that when you end up moving Chase Burns to either Saturday or Sunday for Tennessee. I mean, they're a real deal contender. Definitely a team that can get to Omaha and win it all. I think it's safe to say probably the best team we're going to face all year between that pitching staff and that lineup. There's just not a whole lot of holes top to bottom on either side of that for Tennessee.
One thing that just caught my attention watching the games is how solid they hit the ball. Even their outs were loud outs, like to the warning track. And it was just impressive seeing them hit the ball solid. Even like we would get a hit every now and then, a ball off the hands, and they might get an ugly Texas leaguer coming out there. Tennessee's hitting the ball the warning track for pop outs and just missiles off the bat. It was really impressive.
Yeah. We didn't miss a lot of barrels all weekend. It didn't really matter who was throwing, right? And again, top to bottom, they are a very, very good lineup. One thing that does hurt Tennessee a little bit, they need to clean up their field, and they're a pretty bad fielding team. We saw that this weekend. Unfortunately, Rebels weren't able to ever take advantage of any of it, But that's pretty much the only hole they have in their game. They're a really, really good team all the way around.
Yeah, and other than Game 3, to where Ole Miss in the 9th and 8th inning had the tying run on second, and both innings in that game, it really just wasn't close. And the one thing that I point out, the third game proceeded just like 1 and 2. The difference is we were actually able to pitch the ball and keep their run score down to where whenever we made that late run, hit a couple of long balls, you made it a little bit interesting. Whenever that happened in Game 2, it just made it 10-3. Whenever it happened in Game 1, it was 10-1. But making it 4-3, and all of a sudden, there was a little bit of energy in the team to get back, and I'm hoping beyond hope. Because my biggest fear in this whole situation is that Tennessee series is going to zap their confidence. And then all of us... Go ahead.
I don't think have to worry about the confidence factor as far as this Ole Miss team goes. That's one thing we always have. We have a lot of confidence, but like you said, Sunday we were able to stop the bleeding a little bit when things started to unravel. We were able to get out of innings, and give our offense a chance to get back into it. We all know that our offense can score runs in a hurry, and that's one thing the bullpen was able to do for us Sunday that they weren't able to do for us Friday and Saturday, and that's what we need them to do going forward. Because it's pretty obvious we're not going to have the 3 starting pitchers on the weekend that's just going to go out there and dominate. We've got to use our depth. We've got to use multiple arms every game. And when Max Trophy gets back, that's another arm we can use to do that, But you're probably looking at being able to throw Gaddis and Doherty still but for that third starter, you'll probably still use Diamond, but, you've got to get into the mindset that he's probably not really a starter for us. He needs to be more of an opener that can try to get you through the lineup first time, get you 9 outs, and then start being able to set your bullpen up after to get you through the rest of the game and use all those arms we have available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sets up the series this weekend, which is just a beyond important series now for this team. They have to get back on track. They got Kentucky this weekend. They have Alabama next weekend. They've got 2 series that they basically need to win both of them, get back to 500, and just kind of reset what's going on. What can we expect from the Kentucky Wildcats?
You can expect a team that's going to hit the ball a good bit. Now, they don't pitch it very great. They got a 5.18 ERA on the year as a staff. They're kind of where we're at. They're shuffling people in and out of the weekend rotation, trying to find somebody that can get the job done for them. And they haven't found anybody to stick quite yet, but they can hit the ball a good bit. They're hitting 309 on the year with 28 home runs, and they're a team that runs a lot. They have 31 stolen bases and 34 attempts. So this will be a good weekend for Dunhurst to kind of put those throwing scaries away that he's had these last couple of weeks. You've seen him overthrow second base and try to pick offs and stuff like that that's gotten into the outfield, very uncharacteristic of him. So we need him to be good this weekend and limit their running game.
Yes, very much so. And looking at the rest of the season, let's kind of reset Ole Miss baseball at this point. What are we looking at now? How can we see the rest of the season going?
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is this is still just one weekend, right? Like we played a very, very good team. Nothing went our way. It goes that way sometimes. It doesn't mean that the sky's falling, that Ole Miss baseball is doomed for all of eternity, like some people like to make it sound like after a weekend like this, But we're still 16-7. We're 14-3 in the non-con. We've got 8 non-con games left, with the possibility that Arkansas State game got rained out, getting rescheduled. If the dates end up working out. But say you go 7-1 in those 8 remaining non-con games, one of them being the Governor's Cup. They count that as non-conference, even though it's against Mississippi State. Well, if you do 7-1, that gets you to 21-4. So that gets you to that magic 21 number that we've talked about all year as far as non-conference games go when it comes to hosting regionals and super regionals for us, right? So that gets you to 21. Well, then you look and you've got 8 series left in the conference, and you can really make up hay with the schedule. You look at Kentucky, win 2 out of 3, okay? You get Alabama coming home, just say they get 2 of those. And then we go to South Carolina after that. And that's kind of the target weekend where you might be getting Kevin Graham, Max Trophy back. That's the 6-week mark for Kevin Graham that people's been talking about. So if we get him back before we go to South Carolina, take 2 out of 3 there, come home against a depleted Mississippi State team, take 2 out of 3, and then we end up going to Arkansas. Well, say we only get 1 at Arkansas. That's obviously going to be a tough series, and then we come home from Missouri, and they're a really bad baseball team. That's the one at home that you absolutely have to get through. We've got to sweep that one. And then at LSU, we won the series up at LSU a couple years ago for the first time, and it seemed like ages, But if you get 2 out of 3 there and 2 out of 3 against A&M, well, you look up, all of a sudden you're 17-13 in the SEC with 21 non-conference wins. That gets you to 38 overall wins for the season. You're still for sure hosting a regional, and you're right on the cusp of being one of those top 8 seeds to host a super if you were to get that far. A lot of season left to play, obviously. We've just got to start hitting the ball a little bit better. We got to figure out what we're going to do with the pitching. We've got a lot of arms that we can do it with. And like I said, getting Kevin Graham, Max Trophy back, hopefully in a couple of weeks, will be a big shot in the arm for this team.
You're right. And what are your thoughts on the freshman pitchers? When do you just say screw it and just put them on the weekend in the staff?
This Friday. Right
really?
Now. Yep. I'm giving them all the innings they can possibly get. The older guys aren't getting it done. We've seen they're not getting it done. So go ahead and put those guys out there. Let them get the experience. They all have really good stuff, probably as good of a stuff as we have on the team. You've got to let Maddox and Elliott and those guys go out there, and Nichols, and start getting that experience, because you're really going to need them if you're going to get to where you're going this year. You're not getting anywhere this year without those three guys. So you need to get them experience, let them start pitching in the SEC, and let them start gaining a little bit of confidence. And this weekend would be a good weekend to do it.
Yeah, and other than Brandon Johnson, those three they probably handled the Tennessee bats as good as anybody.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, they've all got really good stuff now. I know we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but Elliott, the thing with him starting is you're taking one of your only lefties out of the bullpen, but at this point you've got to do something, right? And it's not even as much as setting Derek Diamond. Like I said, you can throw him out there to get you through the lineup the first time or something like that, but you can't throw him out there expecting to get 5 or 6 innings anymore. I think it's pretty clear that he's not the guy to go out there and do that for, so you've got to put a plan together to come in behind him. That way you can set up an entire game's worth of pitching.
Yeah, just watching this team and what's going on, one thing that I've looked at and what I would do personally, this is just an opinion thing, not a baseball expert thing or anything like that, but I'd go freshman and freshman on Friday and Saturday. I would have Derek Diamond as the opener, and I'd immediately follow for the second time through the order with John Gaddis.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. You know, any change it up a little bit right now, because one thing I know I wouldn't do, I wouldn't throw John Gaddis on Friday. I would move him. If you're starting him, I want him to start on Saturday. And if you're starting Doherty, I want him to start on Sunday. Because you get a little bit bigger of an edge facing the team's number 2 and 3 pitchers with those guys than you do throwing them out there with Gaddis having to face an SEC ace and then Gaddis having to face a number 2 guy. You know, at least piece it together on Friday if you're going to be at a disadvantage anyway. And then give yourself a little bit better chance come Saturday and Sunday with what is really your 2 best starters anyway.
All right, Derek. Now we get down to kind of the nitty-gritty with this, and that is, what should the baseline expectation for this program to be? Because there are businesses in Oxford, very loud, that are okay with hosting a regional every year. That's their baseline on what's going on. There's also people that are very much pro Fire Bianco, that going to Omaha is the only thing that matters. What should be the baseline of this program, and can we still get there this year, and what does that look like?
Well, I think the baseline for any real legitimate college baseball program should be hosting a regional. Like, that's first and foremost. You want to be one of the 16 teams hosting a regional, and then every, call it 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, be able to host a super regional. But consistently be a top 10 team, host a regional, every now and then host a super. And yes, you do want to get to Omaha, obviously. I understand he has been once in 21 years. I understand that argument. Bobby Cox won 16 straight division titles, right? And he won 1 World Series. Baseball is hard to win at year in and year out, and he's one of the greatest managers of all time, right? Bobby Cox. So Mike Bianco, I think he's done a heck of a job. If you ask me, I would have had a statue built for him 2 or 3 years ago, put outside of Swayze Field. I love Mike. I think he does a heck of a job. We're always there. I think he's had 17 or 18 winning seasons in his 21 years there. We're always competitive. We're constantly hosting regionals. I don't understand all the Fire Bianco talk, but I know I'm kind of in the minority there too.
Yeah, and as somebody that grew up going to Mayor's Trophies game in Smithwell Stadium in Jackson between Ole Miss and State, when I was 7, 8 years old, back in the 80s doing that, I remember what Ole Miss Baseball really was. And how big of a deal it was to have Jamie Price and to make that run to the regional championship at Florida State when he pitched as a senior. I remember that, to get excited about Ole Miss Baseball is finally going to do this. And I just remember what it was before Mike Bianco, and I just don't know. Maybe people are just willing to take the risk of going backwards, or they're just, I don't know, so much time has passed by, they just won't change.
At this point, I think it's more that so much time has passed. He has been so successful. For most people, that's really all they know. and now they want a championship. And I get it. I want a championship. I want that more than anything in the world. But I also know that if you go and fire Mike Bianco, the chances of you finding a guy that's going to be consistently a top 10 team and host regionals every year like he does are slim to none. I know last year when he started flirting with LSU, interviewing and all that, by the way, I don't blame him for one bit. If I got treated by this fan base like he does year in and year out, I'd probably go interview for another job too. But, And
it's a loud minority. That's the other thing that when you discuss, it is a loud minority. Whenever you look at you can look at the crowds at Swayze and what's going on and realize it's not that many people. They're just really loud and they say it over and over again.
Over and over again. Yeah, you don't set season ticket sales records by being a hated coach by the most people in your program, But like I said, it is the loud minority, and they just won't stop talking about it for whatever reason. But like I said, Mike, as far as I'm concerned, give him a lifetime contract, let him play out his career here. I have all the confidence in the world he's going to get us there, and he's going to get us the championship that we've been wanting for these past 2 decades. I absolutely think he's the right man for the job, and if you let him go out the right way, you'll probably be able to replace him with McDonald up at Louisville, But reports are that if you were to just go out and fire him, that Mike's not going to come in and take that job after that. You let Mike Bianco go out the right way, replace him with Dan McDonald or Cliff Godwin, something like that, and let's keep this thing rolling. But we got to make sure we do right by Mike and all the work he's put in these last 21 years, because he really has done a heck of a job considering what he took over.
Yeah, I do think he has the right to leave on his own terms. Whenever he decides to quit coaching at Ole Miss, that's when he's going to quit coaching at Ole Miss.
Right.
But because of that is because of the McDonald and Godwin thing. Although I do think it's an assumption thing. I think there's going to be that same loud segment of the fan base that when Mike Bianco steps away, they're going to push for somebody outside that tree. So that fight is absolutely coming, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, and it very well could be, but every time you hear about the fire of Bianco and all that, and people say, well, who are we going to go get? Well, go get Dan McDonald. Well, it's not as easy to say, well, let's just go get one of the top 10 coaches in the country. That's what Dan's been ever since he's been at Louisville, And Godwin's done a heck of a job over there at ECU. I don't know who they would end up going to get. Those would always be my top 2 choices, but those would only be my top 2 choices when Mike Bianco decides on his own that he's ready to leave Ole Miss.
And in the age of NIL, and this is just absolutely real, in the age of NIL, if Ole Miss doesn't have a full team of full scholarship players, that is on the fan base and what they want to do, because it absolutely can happen.
Yeah. I actually talked about this the other day with a buddy of mine. The NIL could be such a big part as far as bringing Ole Miss up to speed on the scholarships. We're behind Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, those programs with the way that those colleges do lottery scholarships and stuff like that with neighboring states, and Ole Miss is still stuck at the 11.7. We don't have anything like that. But with NIL, if we could get people to buy in and actually put money into it, then we could catch up to those schools as far as being able to get that kind of top-tier talent. And that's another thing people don't really realize with Mike Bianco. He's had talent year in and year out with the scholarship limitations that he's had at Ole Miss. But the NIL is definitely something that if people come together and actually pour it into it, there's no telling what kind of program we could have at Ole Miss. He could do wonders with it.
Yeah, it comes down to what you want and what the expectations, like we talked about before. What is the expectations for this program? If it's just something you want to be good as is and you're just competitive, this is probably as good as it can be with everybody having resources, advantages seemingly around the conference. But if you want it to be really special in the age of NIL, it's kind of on you, really.
Yeah. It's easy to get there if you're really committed to but that's kind of the problem, too. Most people just want to talk about it and not actually put anything up to do anything about it.
Yeah, and like I said, I do think that loud minority that just says things over and over again, that can affect the narrative of the overall fan base. All of a sudden, that infects podcasts and things like that, and everybody's talking about what's going on. It's like people that say Mississippi is a baseball state. With Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Southern. No, Mississippi is just good at baseball. football videos get 75% more views.
Yeah.
It's not a baseball state. It's just good at it, but those same people are just yelling at it over and over and over again. To the point where Mississippi State, I love Duty Noble Field. It's a nice park. It is absolutely fantastic. It's a complete waste of money.
Oh, yeah. As far as investment, of course it is. Anything with baseball really is. I mean, again, you look at Ole Miss, for example, and we can put 11,000 in the stands, 3 games for a weekend, and you're still looking at just barely cutting even, right? I mean, but that's just the way college baseball is. But we definitely love it down here in Mississippi. People get behind it. One of the few states that really does, and
because they're good at it. To be fair.
Yeah, it's absolutely because they're good at it. Look, if they weren't good at it, nobody would show up on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Take football, for example. When we weren't very good then, you could look up and there would be, 12, 13,000 people in Vaught Hemingway Stadium because people just weren't going to spend their time to get out there and drive out there to spend the money to do it.
Yeah, I think if Mississippi was like Alabama, the major colleges in baseball, it would look a lot like Alabama. I mean, probably decent numbers, but the attendance would be 3,000, 4,000 people at a game, something like that, just diehards in it. But the states kind of mirror each other in more ways than just on the map.
Yeah, that's kind of like when we played Auburn last weekend, and the Thursday night game that's televised. Oh, we got a packed house here in Auburn with a little over 5,000 fans here. But Lord, 5,000 fans. That's half we put in there on the name Friday night against Kentucky.
Yeah, they put 5,000 fans for a midweek against North Alabama.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just different here in Mississippi. We do love college baseball here, and to your point, it is because we are very good at it. But people love it, and they come out and support it, and I'm really happy with where we're at right now. I think we still have a heck of a team. We got a heck of a lot in front of us. This weekend wasn't the end of the world or anything. We just got to figure out a couple spots, get Kevin Graham back, Chofie, deepen that bullpen a little bit, stretch out our starters, get a little more creative on the weekends, and have all the faith in Bianco and company to be able to figure out the best way to do that.
Yeah, and you know the way to beat Tennessee. It's just really hard to do it. The fact that their starters went 7 or 8 innings, if you can cut that down to where you get to their bullpen early, you can do some damage against that team because all of our runs were scored against the bullpen, it seemed like.
Yeah. I mean, if you can hit the velocity, sit on the fastball, hit the fastballs in the zone, spit on everything else, drive up the pitch counts, try to get it into that bullpen. The bullpen hadn't been really good this year, But that's just one thing we did a very, very poor job of doing. We couldn't catch up to any of the fastballs. We couldn't run up pitch count.
Except for Elko, who turned around on 101 or something like that.
And our man Kemp Alderman hit another bomb this weekend, too, obviously.
Kemp Alderman has a chance by the time he leaves to be a special hitter.
Yeah, he really does. He could be the best power hitter to ever come through Oxford. He can really get on that fastball, and he can drive it to all fields too. You see Elko drive it the other way all the time, but now you see Kemp kind of take that approach, try to drive it the other way, and if he ends up getting a hold of one on the inside part of the plate, well, that's when it goes 450 feet and hit 115 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Tune in tomorrow where we talk about spring practice and their second spring practice through it. Later on today, we're going to have an extra video with the press conference highlights. Now make your second listens Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL quarterback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Derek, thank you so much for participating in this autopsy after a rough weekend in football or baseball. And maybe against Kentucky they can get it turned around. We'll see. But I definitely wanted to have you on just to talk about what happened and where we go from here.
Oh yeah. We got to talk about the good and the bad. This was definitely a bad, and hopefully next week we're talking about either a 4-1 or 5-0 week for the Rebels. Get things turned around.
Yeah, my philosophy on the post-game pods I do after the games, I don't know if you listen to them or watch them or whatever's going on, but I want to talk about Ole Miss without putting down the other team. Because I think that is the whole thing. It's either they lose or you lose, and it turns into a negative video both ways, even if you win the game. That doesn't build up your team at all, even though they actually won the game. They did what they had to do. And they think that if you talk about them up, you have to, tear them down. And I try not to do that. I try to be as fair as possible and just really just say what happened.
Yeah, well, if you were able to tear Tennessee down this past weekend, then you're one heck of a man, because there wasn't a whole lot of flaws in what they did this days.
Half of my upvotes this weekend came from Tennessee fans, so at least, So I think I did a pretty decent job of telling it like it is. It was kind of hard to go anyway on that. But anyway, Derek, man, thank you, man.
All right, appreciate it, bud. Hi, Toddy.
All right, see you next week.
All right.